Alright, we're on Gotama. In the city of Shravasti, every child knew the name of the exalted Buddha, and every household was ready to fill the alms bowls of the Buddha's silent begging disciples. Near the city lay Gotama's favorite dwelling place, the Jeta Grove, which had been presented to him and his followers as a gift by the wealthy merchant Anatta Bindika, an ardent devotee of the Exalted One. The two young ascetics were led to this region by tales and the answers they received to their questions as they went along trying to learn Gotama's whereabouts. When they arrived in Shravasti, food was offered to them at the very first house where they stopped to beg. They accepted the food, and Siddhartha asked the woman who gave it to them, "Generous lady, we would so much like to learn where the supremely venerable one, the Buddha, is staying, for we are two Shramanas from the forest and have come to see him, the perfect one, and hear the teaching from his lips." The woman replied, "You have truly come to the right place. You Shramanas from the forest know that the Exalted One is staying in the Jeta Grove, Anatta Pidnika's garden. You can spend the night there, wayfarers, for there is enough room even for the countless seekers who flock to that place to hear the teaching from his lips." Govinda was very happy and joyfully exclaimed, "Excellent, our goal is reached and our journey is at an end. But tell us, mother of wayfarers, do you know the Buddha? Have you seen him with your own eyes?" The woman replied, "I have seen the Exalted One many times. Many a day I have seen him passing through the streets, silent in his yellow robe, holding out his alms bowl without speaking at the doors of the houses and carrying his full bowl away. They just give him money." Govinda listened rapt and was eager to ask the woman more questions, but Siddhartha urged them to move on. They said their thanks and continued their journey. They scarcely needed to ask the way, for there were quite a few mendicants and monks from Gotama's community on the way to the Jeta Grove. Since they reached the place at night, there were constant new arrivals and incessant shouting and talking coming from those asking for a place to sleep and others allotting them one. The two Shramanas used to life in the forest quickly and quietly found a place to lie down and rested there till morning. By the dawn's light, they saw with astonishment what a huge host of believers and curiosity seekers had spent the night there along the paths of the magnificent grove. Yellow-robed monks were moving. Here and there they sat beneath the trees, absorbed in meditation or engaged in spiritual discourse. The shady gardens gave the impression of a city full of people. Swarming like bees, the majority of monks were leaving with their alms bowls to gather food in the city for the midday meal, the only meal of the day. Even the Buddha himself, the enlightened one, had the custom of going along in the morning, begging around. Siddhartha saw him and recognized him instantly, as though he had been pointed out by a god. He saw a plain man in a yellow habit, walking silently with his begging bowl in his hand. "Look over there," said Siddhartha softly to Govinda. "That one over there is the Buddha." All eyes, Govinda looked at the monk in the yellow habit, who seemed in no way distinct from the hundreds of the other monks, but soon Govinda saw it too. It was him. And they followed him and watched. The Buddha went his way humbly, absorbed in thought. His quiet face was neither happy nor sad. It gave the impression of a slight inward smile. The Buddha moved quietly, calmly, with a hidden smile, not unlike a healthy child. Just like all his monks, he wore a robe and placed his feet precisely according to precept, but his face and gait, his still lowered gaze, his still loose hanging hand, and even every finger on his still loose hanging hand were expressions of peace, of perfection, seeking nothing, emulating nothing, breathing gently. He moved in an atmosphere of imperishable calm, imperishable light, inviolable peace. So Gotama went his way toward the city to gather alms, and the two Shramanas knew him only by the perfection of his calm, the stillness of his form, in which no seeking, wanting, imitating, or effort could be found, only light and peace. "Today we shall hear the teaching from his lips," said Govinda. Siddhartha did not reply. He was little interested in the teaching. He doubted it would contain anything new to him, since, like Govinda, he had repeatedly heard the content of this Buddha Dharma, even if only second or third hand. But he kept his eye attentively on the Buddha's head, his shoulders, his feet, on his still loose hand, and it seemed to him that every joint on every finger of his hand was teaching, that it spoke truth, breathed truth, smelled the truth, glowed with truth. This man, this Buddha, was in truth who he was even in the movements of his little fingers. This man was holy. Never had Siddhartha so venerated anyone. Never had he loved a person as he loved this one. The two youths followed the Buddha silently all the way into the city and back. Since they planned to abstain from food that day themselves, they watched the Buddha return from city and take his meal among his disciples. What he ate would not have satisfied a bird. Then they saw him withdraw into the shadows of the mango grove. But in the evening, when the heat had subsided and everyone in the camp had revived and assembled, they heard the Buddha teach. They heard his voice, and that too was perfect, characterized by perfect calmness and peace. Gotama taught the teaching of suffering, the origin of suffering, and the path to the cessation of suffering. His quiet discourse flowed calm and clear. Life was suffering. The world was full of suffering, but liberation from suffering had been found. He who followed the path of the Buddha attained liberation. With the gentle but firm voice, the Exalted One taught the four main truths in the Eightfold Path. Patiently, he followed the customary course of the teaching, giving the examples and making the repetitions. His voice floated bright and still over the listeners like a light, like a sky full of stars. When the Buddha ended his talk, night had already fallen. Many who had journeyed to see him came forward and asked to be accepted into the community and took refuge in the teaching. And the Buddha accepted them by saying, "Well, have you heard the teaching, and well has it been proclaimed? Enter into it then, and live in sacredness, so as to bring an end to suffering." And behold, shy Govinda also stepped forward and said, "I too take refuge in the Exalted One and his teaching," and requested to be accepted as a disciple, and he was accepted. Immediately afterward, when the Buddha had withdrawn to take his night's rest, Govinda turned to Siddhartha and said animatedly, "Siddhartha, it is not my place to criticize you, but together we listened to the Exalted One, together we heard the teaching." Govinda heard the teaching and he took refuge in it. "But you, honorable friend, do you not wish to tread the path of liberation? Are you going to hesitate? Are you going to continue to wait?" Siddhartha awoke as from a sleep when he heard Govinda's words. He looked for a long time into Govinda's face, then he spoke softly in a voice without mockery. "Govinda, my friend, now you have taken the step. You have chosen your path always. Govinda, you have been my friend, and always have you been a step behind me. Often I thought, is Govinda ever going to take a step on his own, without me, acting from his own heart? And there it is. Now you have become a man and have chosen your own path. May you follow it to its end, my friend. May you attain liberation." Govinda, who did not yet fully understand, repeated his question in impatient tones. "Come on now, my friend, out with it. Tell me that it could not be otherwise, but that you, my learned friend, will also take refuge in the exalted Buddha." Siddhartha laid his hand on Govinda's shoulder. "You did not listen to my words of aspiration for you, my blessing. I will repeat it. May you follow this path to the end. May you attain liberation." In this moment, Govinda realized his friend had left him, and he began to cry. "Siddhartha," he wailed. Siddhartha spoke to him kindly. "Do not forget, Govinda, that you are now one of the Buddha's Shramanas. You have given up home and parents, given up lineage and possessions, given up your own will, given up friendship. This is a requirement of the teaching. This is a requirement of the Exalted One. This is what you yourself want, and tomorrow, Govinda, I will leave you." For a long time afterward, the two friends wandered in the trees. For a long time after they lay down, sleep did not come to them. Again and again, Govinda pressed his friend to tell him why he would not take refuge in the Buddha's teachings, what flaw he found in his teaching. But each time Siddhartha rebuffed him. Each time Siddhartha rebuffed him. "Give it up, Govinda. The Exalted One's teaching is excellent. How should I find a flaw in it?" At first light, a follower of the Buddha's, one of his oldest monks, went through the garden calling everyone to him who had newly taken refuge in the teaching so he could invest them with the yellow robe and instruct them in the initial precepts and duties of their new condition. Govinda pulled himself away from his childhood friend, embracing him one more time and joined the procession of neophytes. But Siddhartha wandered through the grove, thinking. There Gotama, the Exalted One, encountered him. Siddhartha greeted him respectfully, and as the Buddha's gaze was so full of kindness and quietude, the youth took courage and asked the Venerable One's permission to address him. Without speaking, the Exalted One nodded his assent. Siddhartha said, "Yesterday, O Exalted One, it was granted to me to hear your wondrous teaching. Together with my friend, I came from afar to hear the teaching. And now my friend is going to remain with you. He has taken refuge in you. I, however, am about to resume my wanderings. As you please," said the Venerable One politely. "I speak far too boldly," Siddhartha continued, "but I would not like to leave the Exalted One without having straightforwardly communicated my thoughts to him. Will the Venerable One grant me a further moment's hearing?" Silently, the Buddha nodded assent. Siddhartha said, "There is one thing in your teaching, most Venerable One, that I admire above everything else. Everything in your teaching is perfectly clear and irrefutable. You show the world as a never-broken, perfect chain, an eternal chain consisting of causes and their effects. Never has it been so clearly perceived and so incontrovertibly presented. Incontrovertibly presented. Truly, every Brahmin's heart must beat faster in his breast when, through your teaching, he glimpses the world as a perfectly linked whole, without a break, clear as a crystal, not dependent on anything random, not dependent on the gods. Let us leave aside whether it is good or bad, whether life in it is suffering or joy. This may not be an essential question, but the unity of the world, the interdependence of everything that occurs, the inclusion of everything, big and small, within the same flow, the same law of causation, of becoming and passing away. This shines clearly forth from your exalted doctrine, O perfect one. But now, according to your own doctrine, this unity and consistency of all things is nevertheless broken at one point. Through one small gap there flows into this world of unity something alien, new, something that did not exist before, that cannot be demonstrated and proven. This is your own teaching of the overcoming of the world of liberation. But by this small gap, this small break, the unified and eternal cosmic lawfulness is again quashed and invalidated. Please pardon me for bringing up this objection. Gap flows in this world of unity, something alien, new. This is your own teaching of the overcoming of the world of liberation. But this small gap, this small break, the unified and eternal cosmic lawfulness is again quashed and invalidated. Please, okay, I know what he's saying. Gotama had listened to him quietly, unmoved. Now in his kindly, polite, and clear voice, the perfect one spoke. You have heard the teaching, Brahmin son. Good for you for having pondered it so deeply. You have found a gap in it, a flaw. May you continue to ponder that, but beware, you who are greedy for knowledge, of the jungle of opinions and the battle of words. Opinions are worth little. They can be beautiful or ugly. Anyone can espouse or reject them. But the teaching that you heard from me is not my opinion, and its aim is not to explain the world to those who are greedy for knowledge. It has a different aim, liberation from suffering. This is what Gotama teaches, nothing else. Please do not be angry with me, exalted one, the youth said it. It was not to contend with you, not to fight with you over words that I spoke the way I did. You are indeed right. Opinions are worth little, but allow me to say one thing more. Not for a moment have I doubted you. I have not doubted for a moment that you are a Buddha, that you have attained the goal, the supreme goal toward which so many thousands of Brahmins and Brahmin sons strive. You have found liberation from death. This came to you as a result of your own seeking on your own path, through thought, through meditation, through realization, through enlightenment, and did not come to you through a teaching, and that is my idea. O exalted one, nobody attains enlightenment through a teaching. O venerable one, you will not be able to express to anyone through words and doctrine what happened to you in the moment of your enlightenment. Much is contained in the doctrine of the enlightened Buddha. Much is taught in it, to live in an honest and upright way to avoid evil. But there is one thing that is so clear and venerable teaching does not contain. It does not contain the mystery of what the exalted one himself experienced. He alone among hundreds of thousands. This is what I understood and realized when I listened to the teaching. This is the reason I am going to continue my wandering, not to find another or better teaching, for I know that one does not exist, but in order to leave behind all teachings and all teachers and to attain my goal on my own or die. But many a time will I recall this day, O exalted one, and this moment when my eyes have beheld a holy man. The Buddha gazed at the ground in stillness. His inscrutable countenance remained still in perfect equanimity. May your thoughts, the venerable one said slowly, not be false ones. May you reach the goal, but tell me, have you seen the host of my Shramanas, my many brothers who have taken refuge in the teaching? And do you believe, unknown Shramana, that it will be better for all of them to abandon the teaching and return to the life of the world and its pleasures? Such an idea is far from my mind, exclaimed SIDDHARTHA. May they all remain with the teaching. May they all reach their goal. It is not for me to judge the life of another. It is only for myself that I must judge, that I must choose and refuse. Liberation from ego is what we Shramanas are seeking, O exalted one. If I were your disciple, O venerable one, I'm afraid it might befall me that my ego would be pacified and liberated only seemingly, only illusorily, only by illusions, only illusorily, illusorily, that in reality you would strive and grow great, for then I would make the teaching, my discipleship, my love of you, and the community of monks into my ego. I'm afraid it might befall me that my ego would be pacified and liberated only seemingly, only illusorily, that in reality you would survive and grow great, for then I would make the teaching, my discipleship, my love of you, and the community of monks into my ego. With a half smile, with an unshakable brightness and kindliness, Gotama looked the stranger in the eye and dismissed him with a scarcely visible gesture. He's like, there's no hope for SIDDHARTHA. You are clever, Shramana, said the venerable one. You know how to speak cleverly, my friend. Beware of excessive cleverness. The Buddha moved on, and his gaze and his half-smile remained engraved in Siddhartha's memory forever. I have never seen anyone with such a gaze. I have never seen anyone smile, sit, and walk in such a way, he thought. In truth, that is just the way I would like to be able to gaze, smile, sit, and walk, so free, so worthy, so hidden, so open, so childlike, and so mysterious. Truly only a person who has penetrated to the inmost part of his self gazes and walks like that. I too shall surely try to penetrate to the innermost part of myself. I have seen a man, one and only one, Siddhartha thought, before whom I had to lower my gaze. Before no other will I ever lower my gaze, no other teaching will seduce me, since this teaching has not seduced me. The Buddha robbed me, thought Siddhartha. He robbed me. The Buddha robbed me, yeah, he robbed me, but yet he gave me even more. He robbed me of my friend who believed in me and now believes in him, who was my shadow and is now Gotama's shadow, but he gave me Siddhartha. He gave me myself. I liked it. All right, that was the end of that chapter. Peace.